Who's first?
Let's talk about minutes.
Okay.
Was talking to Austin about it, and he said that it would be good to get your perspective on this question. Kind of how minutes will be distributed or earned between veteran players and young players, because there's this idea that's being pushed right now by the team that like the youth development is the priority. So how kind of is that? What's the philosophy in your mind on how that's going to work out?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. There's a lot of different ways you can look at it. I think the word earned is very important because first and foremost, if we don't set it up in a way where it's a meritocracy, you're going to have a team that's split and you have a group that knows they're going to play no matter what they do. And then you have a group that knows they're not going to play no matter what they do. And so then neither group really cares that much about what they're doing. And that's unproductive. I think development is not a linear thing. You know, I've said this to you guys before, we want them to improve, but it goes up and down along the way. And timelines are hard to put on young people. Whether it's a young basketball player, a young professional, it's hard to know exactly when they're going to be ready to take on the full responsibilities that are necessary. I think opportunity is something that we have to give some of our young players if it's earned. But we also have to hold standards that keep them accountable. It helps us maintain our identity as a group. It helps us maintain both respect and self-respect, that we're not just giving something to somebody who's undeserving. Because when you have as many young players as we do, we all want it now, right? Like you guys want it now, I want it now. But that's not how it works. And it's my responsibility and our responsibility every day to try to cultivate the environment where these players can grow, and they're all going to grow at different rates. The veteran players are important because, one, they have what our young players want, and that is longevity in the NBA. So whatever anybody thinks of them, it's worked pretty well because they're in the NBA, and the career length in the NBA on average is pretty short. So there's a lot of experiences to be shared, there's a lot of behaviors to be modeled, and then ultimately in the game, we need the team to function. And a couple of young players playing on the court with a couple of veterans can be a good balance because those veterans can help the young players. But I also don't know because we haven't had our first practice yet. And, you know, I said this to all of our young guys at the beginning of the summer. You know, we're not waiting on somebody to come and save us. You're not waiting for somebody to come and walk through the door and, oh, now we're good. Every good player in our league has had a breakout year. Some of them it's their first year, some it's their third year, some it's their fifth year. And there's nothing that says that somebody in our locker room can't have a breakout year this year. And if all of our young players got 10% better this summer, then we will be better. And that's what I want their focus to be, is each of them individually has a responsibility to improve. They're all so young. Like, we drafted Walt, and Walt is a rookie and a young player. He's also older than Keontae, Isaiah, Cody, Taylor, Bryce. Like, he would be the mini vet. And so those moments for me give me perspective on where these young men are in their life, not just their careers. And I think that part can get lost sometimes, where we all talk about players and developing players, but we're also developing humans. And I've said this to you guys before also. I've thought about myself at 21, and I'm really glad that nobody stamped me as a finished product then. And so I have a responsibility to balance both of those things. I am the coach of the basketball team, and so that is massively important to me. But I also have to recognize and understand where they are in their life and help them develop along the way.
What's Ace's developmental process been like over the last 3 months in summer league, and what do you want him to be focused on as training camp begins?
Yeah, his summer's been a whirlwind. That's any rookie, him and Walt. They're both trying to move and figure out where to live and get to know everyone in the organization, and there's a lot of faces and names to learn, and understanding just who to ask what question to. I think he's been great at getting to know his teammates and spend time with them. I mean, his personality, as you guys have gotten a little taste of, super energetic, big smile, brings a lot of joy into our building every day. His teammates have taken to him very quickly. When it comes to what I want from Ace early on, we're going to have to focus on a couple of things. On the defensive side of the ball, he needs to use his length defensively to be disruptive. He may be a little bit younger physically from a strength standpoint, but we've not had a wing with his size and length in this building in a long time. And so I think on that side of the ball, if he can think about using his length to be disruptive defensively and focus on the basic team defense concepts. If he can do that for the first 6 weeks, then we can reestablish what the next set of goals are. On the offensive side, it's going to be about making quick decisions. What shots he shoots and what actions he runs, those things will be changing a little bit, but I just want him to not apply too much pressure to himself to blow everyone away on the first day. He's a really good player. He's really talented, and I have the utmost belief in that. We have the utmost belief in that, and I know there's a lot of excitement around Ace, but what I don't want for him is to fall into this moment of trying to live up to the hype on the first day. He's a member of our team. He just turned 19 years old, and it's on all of us to kind of help him ease into it's the wrong word because that's not how I operate, but I don't want him to think that the first game or the first 2 weeks he has to prove to his teammates or me or any of you that he is what we say he is. I want him to focus on playing good shifts when he's in the game. Hey, I'm going in for the next 7 minutes. Let's play a good 7 minutes. Let's win this 7 minutes. And that's not fun to talk about. That's not sexy to write about. But we almost need to make his life as micro as possible right now because the macro can get daunting when it's like I need to be like all the hype around him and all those things. It's great and it's exciting. But I think for us, we need to just try to make the basketball part, the life part, all as micro as we can.
And you talk about these are humans, they're young humans. How do you keep a dark cloud from forming when you're losing so much? You lost a lot last year. Expectations are that you're probably going to lose a lot this year. How do you keep that dark cloud from forming around the team, around the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I urge them not to read what's written. I also recognize that we are where we are, and I think for me, there's a lot of different ways to measure success with a young team. And our job is to not ride the emotional roller coaster. Last year was hard, sure, but last year's over. And, whatever you're saying the expectations are for this year, like, we're not going to talk about any of that. We're a team, and I want our players to go into the to training camp and the process of preseason, attacking it like any team is. And the dark cloud forms if you start listening to people that aren't there every day. I said earlier, there's this want for everything now, and I understand that. Like, I think everybody in life wants everything to go well now, and they want success now and money now, and everybody wants a promotion, and those things are all real. But I think maybe the biggest part of my job with a young group and with our fan base and with our staff is to recognize the human emotions that come when you do lose, but also to try to continue to provide perspective on what's actually happening. You can't just listen to the emotional part of your brain. There's the logical part too. And I think where we are is really exciting because we have the ability right now to actually form our own identity. And I think growing with these young players is really exciting. I think our fan base should be really excited that if we're the youngest state in the country and we bet on youth, that's what we do. Well, let's bet on these guys and let's be there with them as we're all a part in our own ways. I may have a bigger part than maybe you guys do, but we're all here to raise these young men. And I think that part's really exciting to me because when we get where we want to get to, it's going to be that much more satisfying because you saw the whole journey. So I feel like providing perspective, providing hope, and bringing energy to it every day is all we can do.
It sounds like a lot of them were around town, around the state this summer. How do you like how those young players handled this summer?
The part that I was happiest about is they didn't have to be dragged. They all bonded together. They were here a majority of the summer. They also did some off-site things, like I'm sure Austin and Ryan mentioned the trip to Dallas where, Keontae invited the whole team to Dallas to come work out with him in his neck of the woods. And it's like, that stuff is really productive for just human connection. And I think they all took to heart the message at the beginning of the summer that no one's coming to save you and you all need to band together and everybody needs to improve. I think the fun part was each person had different things they're working on, and those things were pretty known amongst the group, and so they were holding each other accountable to those things. But more than anything, it's in pro sports, sometimes it's hard to have real human connection in the locker room. People come to the gym, they do their job, they go home to their families, and it's all very separate, where when you think about like a college team, you're spending so much time together. You go to practice, then you all go eat together. It's cafeteria. You mostly live together. And so the connection that's built is just based on time spent. So the fact that they were finding different avenues to spend time together this summer and doing hard things together in our gym, I think only is going to lead to a tighter knit group, because for us to get to where we want to go, it's going to be hard. And there's going to be some ugly moments, and there's going to be some uncomfortable moments. There's going to be some hard conversations, and the best way to get through those things is to do it with people that there's a foundation of real trust and love under there.
Will, you mentioned you were kind of a quasi-Minnesota Timberwolves fan growing up. Does that include the
I
beginning?
like Chauncey Billups when he played for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, does that include the beginning of the Kevin Love era? And regardless, what's your knowledge or relationship with Kevin?
Well, it's nice to have someone my age around. No, Kevin's a Hall of Fame player. He's incredible. Kevin won't remember this, but I played against Kevin once in an AAU game in high school when he was on the SoCal All-Stars. His career speaks for itself. I've had some really good conversations with him this summer. What he can bring to our team in terms of a full scope of the experience of an NBA career, what really being a winning player looks like. I think he can also help our young players with the understanding of what it's like to be on the really young team early in your career, because he lived that experience also. So he's been in a bunch of different positions where he's seen a bunch of different things, and his voice is going to be able to communicate things to our team that I never will, because I didn't play in the NBA. And so I always try to lean on the veterans in our locker room of their experience, because I think that their mentorship of the young players will go a long way. I'm excited that Kevin's with us, and I think that he's excited to help these young guys grow. I also know that he's a crazy competitor, and that he's going to come to camp and he's not going to let them off the hook. So the most exciting thing for me is that, we need some depth in our locker room in terms of like depth of experience, and somebody who's seen the NBA from a lot of different angles. And so I think that he's going to be a tremendous leader for our group. I would be shocked if he's not, a massive part of the leadership group on our team.
Given the amount of young talent, but also just the overall depth in the locker room, what are your expectations for training camp and preseason?
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover, and there aren't clear, Lowry, I think, has established himself as a high-level NBA player, and we have a lot of other guys in the locker room who you can make arguments for all of them. And so I think training camp is going to be first and foremost about establishing our competitive identity. Like, we have to have the ability to be honest with each other, and part of being honest with each other is that I'm going to go at you full throttle at practice, and I'm going to try to kick your butt. And then I'm going to love you afterwards, and we can eat lunch. But I think if we can establish that competitive identity in training camp, it's only going to help us, because there's going to be a focus early in the season. I recognize that, on who plays, who doesn't, who starts. That's everybody's favorite question, who starts. We're going to need everybody during the season. We all have been around long enough to know there's going to be injuries, slumps, ups and downs. Everybody has to be ready to go. And so more than anything, the competitive nature of the team is what I care about at training camp, because these minutes are going to have to be earned. We need competence on the floor. A big theme with the team this year is going to be competence over credentials. Like, once you're here, you're here. And you're on the team, you're one of the guys in the locker room. We need the best players on the court.
So, two more?
How important is this season for Taylor?
It's important to him and to us to have him back on the court. I couldn't be more proud of the way that he handled himself throughout last year. I know that I for sure would not have handled it with as much grace and positivity as he did. It's exciting to get him back on the court. I think the importance of it for him is only so that he can see that the hard thing that he went through and all of the really boring rehab that he did paid off. He did a lot of hard work in his life to make it to the NBA. He suffered a tragic injury, but he's back. And so I'm not overanalyzing his basketball in this moment. I think this is a moment that's more about his health, and the fact that he's strong and healthy and feeling confident is the most important thing to me. But I think it's also important not only to Taylor but to our team. Like, they all love him, and he was a big support system for them last year. He's a really close friend of a lot of the guys on the team, and so I think they're all excited to have him back on the court as well.
We heard a little bit about this summer, but what do you want to see different defensively, and what do you want your identity to be on that end of the floor?
Yeah, we have to do a way better job on the perimeter of guarding the ball. I think that's first and foremost. The competitive relentlessness on that end has to pick up where you can't play. I think we've reached a point where enough's enough, and that goes for everybody. Like, Walker needs to improve also, and he knows that. And Walker has a great shot blocking mentality, but I need and we need his overall defensive nature to improve. Like, it's not about being a great shot blocker, it's about being a great defensive player. And those two things can be different. I think Walker has shown signs of being an elite defender in our league, but it needs to take a step up. And the perimeter players need to get on board with that. You know, I also think that we'll go back to mixing our defenses some, which will be productive for us. It's been productive for us in the past. But there are moments where the technical part has to be coached. Put your foot there, put your arm there. There's also moments where you're coaching the human. Stop running into the screen. What does that mean? Stop running into the screen. And I think that sometimes as coaches, we can get too technical and we create too many rules, too many things they're thinking about. Like, it's amazing that any player could ever play defense ever in a pickup game without a game plan. You know, like 5 dudes that have never met each other in their life could play a pickup basketball game and somehow the other team doesn't score every time. It's crazy. I think we need to get back to some of just the real basic competitor human elements of part of what makes good defenses good is that the people on the court deeply care about it and are relentless. It's not always going to be about a scheme saving you, especially in our league, right? There's variance, there's nights where people make crazy shots and special players do special things. But, you know, I've said this for the last couple of years, you're not trying to get a shutout. You're trying to shave 15 points off the game, 12 points off the game. That's the difference between middle of the pack and the best defense in the league. And so we have to have that mindset that if they make a few tough shots in a row, we're not going to stop. We're not going to give in. It's not going to go perfect. The skill level in our league, I don't think, has ever been at a higher level. Dribble, pass, and shoot. It's amazing what the players in our league are doing now. And so we have to meet that level of skill with a little bit of crazy.
Thank you.